Thank you very much for joining us this morning, everybody. My name's Joanne Race, I'm the HR Director, and I'm joined by my colleagues, Madassa Chowdhury, who's the Finance Director, and I'm also very pleased to welcome Rebecca Dodd, who is going to deliver the presentation this morning, who works for Mercers, who are an independent pensions advisory company. So what we wanted to do today really was just provide the opportunity to provide colleagues with an update on where we are with USS. It's been quite a long journey to get to where we are. It feels like we've been talking about USS contribution rates, benefits. Obviously, we've had a lot of disagreement about this, and we'll all remember some of the industrial action that we faced in the last 12 to 18 months around this very issue. So an awful lot of discussion, debate about the future of USS. What will it look like? What will it cost? What will benefits look like? So I just thought that as we've all been so busy with so many other things over the last few months, it was probably a really good time to get Rebecca to come and join us today to give us an update, really, just in terms of where we are, how we've got to this point, and also most importantly, the timescales for the next steps and what we might expect, and hopefully when we'll learn a bit more about what this might mean for all of us. So I'm very delighted to welcome Rebecca, who will hopefully go through all of that. If colleagues could keep questions till the end, I think the presentation will run for about 15 or 20 minutes or so, and then we'll allow ourselves, plenty of time at the end if anybody has any questions that they'd like to ask Rebecca or myself or Madassa, and we're also happy to hear views and comments from people who are on the call as well. So at that point, I will pause and hand on to Rebecca. Thank you.
Thank you. So what I'm going to do today is we're going to go through, first of all, a bit of the background about USS to set the scene, because to understand what is happening at the moment, we do need to understand what benefits USS actually provides. Then we're going to take a look at what's happening at the moment with the current consultation. There's a consultation, it's between USS and employers. As Joanne mentioned, we'll have a look at the timeline of events, what is happening at the moment. And then finally, just before we go to questions, I'll share with you where you can find some more information about USS, the valuation itself, and the current situation if you want to. So to start off with, I'm just going to set the scene and have a look at the background. So this is just going to go through what the benefits actually are in USS, because to understand what is happening at the moment, we need to understand what benefits USS provides. So in USS, everybody earns what's called retirement income builder benefits on their earnings up to a salary threshold. That salary threshold is just under £60,000 at the moment. So on all your earnings up to that salary threshold, you are building up what's called retirement income builder benefits. These are defined benefits, which means that these benefits that you're building up are pension benefits at retirement based on a formula. That formula depends on how long you've been in the scheme, the salaries that you've been earning each year, and a pension build-up rate. Then the annual pension at retirement is worked out using the formula that applies to you. That annual pension is then paid for the rest of your life, and after your death, a portion of it continues onto your spouse, civil partner, or financial dependent. The benefits from the retirement income builder are completely dependent on your formula at retirement. And it doesn't matter what actually you have paid in over the years, and it doesn't matter what your university or your employer has paid into USS over the years. What matters is your formula to calculate your benefits at retirement. On your earnings above the salary threshold, your pension benefits are built up in a slightly different way. So if you do earn above that salary threshold, which is just under £60,000, then your pension build-up for your earnings above the salary threshold are what's called defined contribution in nature. And in USS, they call it the investment builder. So here a contribution a specific contribution from yourself, a specific contribution from the university goes into your investment builder pot on your behalf based on a contribution of your earnings above the salary threshold. Then at retirement, you will have a pot of money from your investment builder based on contributions that have been paid in from yourself, from the university, and any investment returns over the years. There's no formula for this element of benefits, and it's completely dependent on what's been paid in and how that pot has grown over the years. And there's flexibility in how you actually use those, that pot of money at retirement. So 2 elements of pension type in USS, depending on the earnings, but everybody is building up retirement income builder formula benefits on their earnings up to the salary threshold. And it's these benefits in the retirement income builder that the current situation is concerned with. Because those formula benefits, the benefits in the retirement income builder, USS doesn't know exactly how much is going to be paid out. They don't know exactly when it's going to be paid out. They don't know the amount. And then they don't know how long each individual person is going to live, and then how long their spouse, civil partner, or financial dependents will live. So there's lots of unknowns about these benefits. So all schemes such as USS that have these types of benefits have to do what's called a valuation every 3 years. And this is basically a sort of financial health check on the scheme to establish, is there enough money in the scheme to pay for benefits? And every 3 years, USS and any pension scheme like USS has to do this financial health check, and they have to do it in 2 parts. The first part is to check that there is enough money already built up within USS to pay for all the benefits that have been promised so far. The second part of the calculations that USS need to do every 3 years is to check what money needs to keep coming in to pay for benefits building up in the future. Now, when USS or any type of scheme like USS does these calculations, what they need to do is that they need to make assumptions about the future, assumptions about the investment returns that they'll get on the money that they're holding now to pay for benefits in the future. How will that money that they hold grow? Benefits, once they're in payment, they increase in line with a measure of inflation. So what will inflation rates be over time? And what will the life expectancy of members be? How long will these benefits need to be paid? So lots of assumptions about the future, and all the members that are in USS has to do a calculation based on all those members, all those uncertainties about the future, and have to put a cost on how much money they think they need to hold to pay for those benefits, how much money needs to keep coming in to pay for those benefits building up in the future. Regulation says when USS do those calculations, they have to set assumptions about the future, so investment returns, inflation, life expectancy, and any other assumptions that they make. They have to set them cautiously or prudently. In other words, it's USS's job to make sure that there's a better than 50-50 chance that the benefits will actually be paid out when they fall due. So this is USS's job to do the valuation every 3 years and make these assumptions about the future. However, there's lots of different parties involved in the whole USS scheme. In particular, members are paying contributions, universities and employers are paying contributions. There's regulation around this. So, and there's various different parties that all have different views about those assumptions in the future, because those assumptions are, as they say, they're assumptions about the future. Even though they have to be set prudently, there's different views and different opinions about what they should be. So I'm going to introduce you to the parties that are involved in looking at the whole valuation and the running of USS and what their views they think. So first of all, we have USS itself. The USS trustees, they have a statutory duty to make sure that benefits are paid to members when they fall due. Next group is Universities UK or UUK. Now, this is the organisation that supports all the employers and universities in USS. There's around 360 different employers in USS. Many of them universities, and then there's a lot of other institutions that are connected with the higher education sector that take part in USS. So UUK acts as a support network for those universities and acts as a voice for those universities as well, and the employers in USS. The next group is UCU, the University and College Union, who support all employees in USS. Now, that isn't just members who are in the union itself. They have a role to support all employees in USS and have a voice there. The next party I'm going to mention is the pensions regulator. Now, the pensions regulator's job is to make sure that USS are doing their job. The pensions regulator, it was set up to ensure that schemes like USS are funded properly, that they're governed properly, and that there is enough money to pay for benefits when they fall due for members. That is their role, to make sure that these things happen. Now, at the last valuation, well, in 2017, and then there was an extra valuation done in 2018, which I'll come on to, but at the previous valuations, all these groups had different views about how the valuation calculations should be done. In particular, after the 2017 valuation calculations were done, all these parties had different views. So without being able to come up with a sort of a consistent view, it was decided that a new group would be established called the Joint Expert Panel, or the JEP. The Joint Expert Panel is a group of industry experts and was set up to actually look at the valuation calculations USS were doing and to make recommendations about how they thought things could be done within the realms of regulation and within the requirements that the statutory role that USS has to play. Finally, the group that I want to mention is the Joint Negotiating Committee. Now, this committee's job, or the JNC, is to propose any changes to contributions or benefits that might occur in USS. It is only the Joint Negotiating Committee that can make these proposals for change. It isn't USS themselves, it isn't Universities UK, UCU, or the Joint Expert Panel. It's the Joint Negotiating Committee that are the group that are tasked with, if there are to be changes to made, they would propose them. The Joint Negotiating Committee is made up of 11 people, 5 representatives from the employers from Universities UK, 5 representatives from the union, from UCU, and 1 independent chairperson. So, I mentioned there was a valuation in 2017, and after there was a lot of disagreement about that valuation, the Joint Expert Panel made lots of recommendations, and there was another valuation done in 2018 to try and incorporate some of the recommendations that the Joint Expert Panel had made. In the meantime, between the 2017 valuation and the 2018 valuation commencing, USS proposed some increases to contributions. That was because there was no decision made about benefits. You know that there were proposals to change benefits back in 2018, but they were removed. And so USS increased or proposed that the contributions were increased, and that went through in April 2019. And your contributions went up from 8% to 8.8%. And the universities' contributions went up from 18% to 19.5% at April 2019, whilst USS was still doing their valuation calculations for the next 2018 valuation. The 2018 valuation revealed that they still couldn't keep their contributions at the levels that everybody was hoping for. And as a result of the 2018 valuation, contributions went up again. And from October 2019, contributions went up to the levels that you are currently paying. So you as a member are currently paying 9.6% of your salary into USS, and Durham is paying 21.1% into USS on your behalf as well. Now, at that valuation, it was agreed that to keep the contributions even at those levels, at the 9.6 for members, that actually things would need to change later on, because USS still felt that those contributions were still set at too low a level given the results of the valuation. So from October 2021, unless anything changes, contributions are due to increase to 11% for members and to 23.7% for employers and for the university. As part of keeping those contributions down at the October 2019 levels, the regulator working with USS said, you do need to do a valuation though within 2 years. So within 3 years of the 2017 valuation. So there is a valuation due at March 2020. So the valuation due at 31st of March 2020, as we all know, was at a point in history that none of us could have predicted. And the markets, the financial markets at that time, were very volatile, were at quite extreme levels. But USS said they did need to proceed with that valuation because it would allow them time to consider the options, consider the calculations before the new contribution rates from October 2021 were due to come in. They also said that it would allow time to consider if markets were improving from March 2020. So there still might be time even now as markets progress and things maybe level out. We don't know. Nobody knows at the moment. But if things improve, USS would be able to take those improvements into account with their calculations. So they decided to proceed with the valuation. So that brings us on to what's actually happening at the moment. I mentioned it's USS's job to do the valuation calculations, but before they finalise them, they are consulting with employers about the method and assumptions that they're using in doing those calculations. And that is what the current consultation is all about. USS has asked for the views of all employers who have employees in USS. Now, when USS have set out their method and assumptions, they have set them out in detail to share with employers. And what they've done is, when they've set out their method and assumptions in doing these valuation calculations, they've set out a range of illustrative contributions that the end result might result in. But what they've done is, when they've illustrated these contributions, what the valuation result might result in, they've had to do a range of contributions because they're still unsure about how USS see the strength of the higher education sector. And this is known as the covenant of the higher education sector. So the stronger the higher education sector is, the more reliance that USS can put on the sector. So in other words, the more sure USS can be that the sector will still be there in years and years to come to provide the security and any increases in contributions or any support needed to keep the scheme going in the future. So the stronger the higher education sector covenant, the lower the contributions could be now, because they can take a little more risk in the contributions now. And by relying, they don't need as much money coming in now, because they can rely on the sector in the future to pay for any extra contributions that might be needed if things didn't turn out as expected. But as we know, there's a lot happened in recent times with the higher education sector. And indeed, it already started to change, and the shape of the sector has started to change over the years running up to this point. So at the 2018 valuation, USS's covenant advisors had said, yes, the sector is still strong, it's very strong, but it's on negative watch, we're keeping an eye out on it. So USS are thinking about the strength of the sector, and while they've been thinking about it, they're still not sure. And I'll come on to what they need to gain to get that assurity. But at the moment, they have set out their calculations in the valuation, assuming that actually that higher education sector is not quite as strong as it used to be. So they've they've looked at the first set of calculations. What would we need to get in contributions if the sector is only seen as tending to strong now? So what USS have illustrated, and I really emphasize this point, they've illustrated what the contributions might be if the USS can only rely on the sector in a tending to strong capacity. And these contributions, member contribution rates of 22%, employer contributions of 46%, eye-watering levels of contribution if the university, if the USS can only see the sector as tending to strong in the future. However, they have also illustrated the point, if the sector could be classed as strong again, and USS have actually illustrated a whole range of contributions in between here, if the sector could be classed as strong again, what would that do to the contributions? But as you can see here, that would only reduce contributions for members to say 13%, employer contributions to 28%, which is still way too high compared to what you're paying now, compared to what you were paying, and it's still too high for employers. But I would stress these are not the final levels of contributions. There's still a lot of unknowns in the mix at the moment. As well as the method and assumptions, there's lots of unknowns about what will happen to markets between the valuation date as we go through these calculation processes. This is a consultation. What will that mean in terms of actual levels? Could they be discussed and could they be changed? But at the moment, USS is asking for employers what they think about the inputs into these contributions.
Becky, can we just clarify there? In the middle column there, it says tending to weak. Should that say tending to strong?
It should indeed. Yes, that's. I do apologise. That's a typo from me. That should say tending to strong on there. We'll get that changed on the final levels slides.
And yes, that's where we think we'll land you there. We'll be tending to strong or strong covenant.
Yes. So I do apologise. Yes, that should be tending to strong there. So USS have erred on the side of caution to give their initial set of calculations. The lowest level they think it could go is tending to strong. And they're hoping, with the support of the sector, to move that to the strong level again. But in order to do that, USS has suggested that there should be 3 areas that things need to happen in order for USS to feel and to be assured that the sector is strong. The first thing is that USS have asked their covenant advisors, PwC, to do another covenant review. So look at the strength of the sector and comment on whether they think that is still strong. If they do, then USS is saying on top of that, on top of the covenant review, USS would need to have some additional covenant enhancing measures from the employers in USS to assure them that the sector was strong now and could stay strong in the future. So these covenant enhancing measures, the first one is for USS to monitor any debt levels of employers on a regular basis. Second one is to ensure that USS has an equal footing as other lenders in the event that a debt needs to be repaid that a university or an employer has taken out. And this is called pari passu on secured debt. So USS wants to be at the same level to get any payments they need if a university was having to repay any of its debt. And finally, the third covenant enhancing measure that USS wants to introduce is a rule change that will stop any institution, any employer in USS walking away from their commitments to USS without the express permission first of the USS trustees. Finally, USS have also said to get to the lower end of those contributions that I showed on the previous slide, that they're looking for further support from the employers. And USS have asked, what further support could you give us, USS, to be able to reassure them that the strength of the sector is still strong? So USS have asked for feedback from all employers in USS. Durham and other employers in USS will be feeding back to Universities UK, who will be collating all the responses on behalf of all the employers and then feeding that back to USS. USS have asked for a range of specific comments. Firstly, about the inputs and assumptions that USS have used in their valuation calculations, the methodology of the way that the calculations have been done. USS are asking for comments on the risk management framework that they have suggested. They're also looking for comments on the calculations that they have done to work out how much money they think they need to hold for all the benefits that have already been promised to members. So all those benefits that have already been built up. So USS are looking for those comments on how they've done the calculation to work out that liability. USS are also looking for comments on those covenant enhancing measures that we've just gone through and how that would affect the universities or the employers. They're looking for what additional support employers can give to USS to prove the strength of the sector.
Rebecca, you've gone on mute. I'm not sure what's happened there. You must have pressed something by mistake.
I'm sorry. Where had we got up to, Joanne?
Additional support.
Right. So apologies for that. Additional support for employers can give. The USS are looking for any additional support that employers might be able to give to improve the strength of the sector. They're asking for what contributions employers could actually afford. And finally, USS are asking for what risk employers are prepared to take, what they would be willing to pay or do in the future if things turned out much worse than expected. And the university has to reply on all these things. But that is incredibly difficult for Durham and employers to respond to the consultation. Firstly, because the contributions that have been illustrated, even with a strong strength of the sector, even with that strong covenant assessment, are not what employers or employees would consider affordable for them, so for the employers or for members. And what does this consultation actually mean? Given those illustrative contributions that have been set out, does it mean that benefits need to change? It's unclear about what responses are needed and what that will result in, what USS will do with those responses. Could the responses to this valuation mean the position could change? It's unclear. It's unclear what the university's responses will do in response to the actual illustrative contributions given. So more information is needed from USS on those points. And also, Universities UK are helping employers to respond to this consultation, but will it actually mean a difference in the position that USS come up with? It's unclear at the moment. But Durham itself are very concerned about what this consultation and these illustrative figures actually mean for themselves in terms of affordability, but particularly concerning about members. What about the fairness between different generations of membership, different generation of members in USS? It's not appropriate just to keep increasing member contributions ad infinitum. Where will it stop? What will the position be for members? And in particular, even on the current rates of contributions, Durham and other employers are seeing members opting out of USS because of the already high member contribution rates. So Durham are wanting to feed all these concerns into their responses. So now I'm going to look at the timeline. Under regulation, the valuation has to be signed off within 15 months of the valuation date. So USS have set out what they see as the timeline of events from now. Firstly, they say that they want to share with the Joint Negotiating Committee by December 2020 information about contributions. So it will be then up to the JNC, the Joint Negotiating Committee, to decide if there will be any changes to contributions or benefits. If there are to be any changes, then USS is expecting that members will be consulted with from March 2021. This is when you will have your say as members. The valuation should be signed off by the end of June 2021. And then by October 2021, hopefully any revised contributions or benefits would be implemented before those next round of increases do come in. So that's the timeline there. And finally, I'm just going to share with you where you can get some information if you want to about the valuation. The first is the valuation website, USS website itself. On there, as well as finding all details about your benefits, you can find out more about the 2020 valuation itself. And if you wanted to, you could go on to the USS Employers website, which is a website run by Universities UK, where they've got all the consultation documents and advice documents that have been shared with Durham and with other employers in USS. And all the detail is in there if you wanted to look at it.